Did you know that for the first time in decades, more people are leaving Canada than moving in? Despite its global reputation as a haven of opportunity, a stunning number of Canadians are packing up and saying goodbye to the country. Last year alone, Canada saw an unexpected spike in outbound migration. Over 40,000 citizens and residents left for good. Only 47% of permanent residents in recent years went for citizenship.
Canada. More Canadians are choosing to live abroad.
We're leaving Canada. We're done. I'm deciding to move back to India.
What is the biggest thing you regret in life?
I regret in life? I regret coming to Canada.
So, what's happening in this once sought-after land of dreams? It all starts with the Canadian housing market. Once a stable path to prosperity, it has now become a disillusionment for many.
Or even out of the country, because prices are so expensive in the Toronto area and people just don't want to be handcuffed to a very high mortgage for the next 30 years.
For every 1,000 Canadians, there are only about 424 homes, compared to over 500 homes per 1,000 people in countries like France and Germany.
Can't buy anything. I can't afford the rent these days. How the hell is anyone existing in Canada? I feel trapped.
This demand-supply gap has led to increase in home prices in Canada's major cities by over 110% since 2010. The average cost of a home in major cities like Vancouver has surged to over $1.4 million.
Student flies twice a week from Calgary to Vancouver, saving big bucks on rent.
I need to pay $2,500 for the rent. I don't feel that is viable.
He pays roughly $150 per round-trip flight twice a week, about $1,200 per month total. That's half the average rent for a one-bedroom in the city.
I thought, why don't I just stay at Calgary and then just fly here, 1 hour flight. That's
Even in smaller cities like Halifax and Ottawa, home prices has been increased by more than 50% in just 5 years. This has made most of the Canadians to give up on their dreams of owning a house. However, the actual problem is not soaring property values, but stagnant wages. In fact, when you factor in inflation, real wage growth is practically non-existent. Over the past decade, wages increased by just 2.6% annually, barely keeping pace with inflation, while housing prices surged at an average annual rate of 8.2%. This considerably widened the gap between a person's annual income and cost to own a house. In 1980, Canada's GDP per capita was $17,000 per annum, while the median house price was $76,000. However, by 2023, the situation has changed greatly, where GDP per capita has increased to $56,000 per annum. However, in contrast, the median house price has risen to $720,000. Making the matters further worse and dark for Canadians is a great number of homes that are lying vacant, and people are seriously questioning government policies. Foreign investors, particularly from countries like China, used Canadian real estate as a safe haven for their capital. In some neighborhoods, up to 10% of homes sit vacant for long periods, essentially turning these properties into financial assets rather than places where people live. Real estate price increase is a one-way journey unless a crisis occurs. Seeing this, many who abandoned their wish to have a home were fine with renting one. However, rents have followed the same pattern as that for ownership cost. In an undersupplied rental market, people are fighting for occupying a rental space. Against a single rental vacancy, there are hundreds of applications. In Vancouver, the average monthly rent for a one-bedroom apartment is now $12,600, an increase of over 40% in just 5 years. People are organizing mass rallies and campaigns to put a stop to the rental increases. Many who are not able to pay their rents have stopped paying it, and tenants are also on strike to preserve. Now compare this with the average monthly income of just $4,800 in Canada. After paying this hefty rent, travel costs and food, people are not left with any penny in their pocket. This has pushed many families further away from urban centers where they work, forcing them to endure longer commutes. In fact, the average commute time in Toronto has now stretched to over 45 minutes each way. As more, people are priced out of the core. Over 600,000 Canadians now commute over an hour daily to reach work, spending an increasing portion of their lives stuck in traffic or packed public transit. It's not just housing that has made life difficult for people in Canada. the cost of living in Canada has also spiraled out of control. Inflation reached levels unseen since the 1970s, peaking at nearly 7% in 2022. This means that everything, food, gas, utilities, became more expensive, seemingly overnight.
I'm unemployed. I don't have a job here.
Indians have become one of the largest group of immigrants.
I'm sitting and crying in someone else's house.
I hope to stay there and I hope to make a life for myself there.
Literally, I was homeless. So I decided to pack my stuff and move to India.
The consumer price index increased dramatically and Canadians started feeling the squeeze. And once this genie of inflation is out of the bottle, there is no way to get it back in. Food prices alone increased by nearly 11% in 2022, hitting the hardest where it hurts most, on basic staples. Today, 1 in 7 Canadians faces food insecurity, an all-time high, signaling a growing crisis in households across the country.
Humanizing us. They're not looking at how it can affect us as human beings.
And it's not just food. Fuel prices have followed the same trend. In 2023, the price of gas hit nearly $1.90 per litre, compared to just $1.20 in 2019. Commuters are finding their wallets drained simply trying to get to work. While the cost of living has skyrocketed, Canadian workers today have less purchasing power than they did 5 years ago. In big cities, it's estimated that workers would need to earn at least $22 per hour just to meet the basic cost of living.
I'm not shaking your hand, bro. You're a piece of Why is that, sir?
That's assuming no unexpected expenses like medical bills, car repairs, or education costs.
No credit checks. There is no nothing. You come in, you pay today, you pay a $500 deposit, you've got gym membership included, you've got indoor-outdoor pool included.
In reality, many people are earning far less, with minimum wage in Ontario sitting at $16.55 per hour as of 2023, well below the threshold needed to stay afloat. This has stretched people to their limits. Their paychecks no longer cover rent, food, and transportation. Circumstances are compelling them to make difficult decisions, whether to cut back on essentials, borrow money, or leave the country in search of better opportunities. Yesteryear, 47% of Canadians reported feeling financially worse off compared to the previous year, a stark reminder of how quickly inflation and wage stagnation are eroding quality of life. As inflation bites into household budgets, many are turning to side gigs and freelance work just to make ends meet. Nearly 15% of workers in 2023 were engaged in gig economy work, such as food delivery or ride sharing, up from just 10% in 2019. This reflects not a desire for flexible work, but the necessity of supplementing stagnant incomes. These aren't just young people seeking extra income. Adults in their 30s, 40s, and even seniors are turning to gig work to compensate for rising living costs. For many, the traditional 9-to-5 job is no longer enough to survive. And as household budgets grow tighter, Canadians are turning to credit cards and loans to cover basic needs. The country's household debt-to-income ratio is now over 180%, one of the highest in the world. This means that for every dollar of income, Canadians owe nearly $1.80 in debt, primarily mortgages, car loans, and credit card balances. After spending all their monthly earnings on food, rent, travel, and taxes, there is nothing left with people to spend on other basic life necessities like health and education. Canada's universal healthcare system was once the envy of the world, but it's not so anymore. A symbol of fairness and accessibility is now marked by growing inefficiencies. In 2023, the average wait time for medically necessary treatments reached a record 27.4 weeks, the longest in Canadian history. That's more than half a year of waiting for critical surgeries and specialist care. For millions of Canadians, this isn't just an inconvenience, it's life-threatening. A lack of coordinated strategy to solve issues of the healthcare system between federal and provincial policies has made it a great mess. There are wide disparities in care depending on where you live. Despite being one of the world's highest spenders on healthcare at $7,507 per capita, Canada ranks poorly in terms of access and timeliness of care. Canada is now placed 26th out of 30 OECD nations for hospital bed availability per 1,000 people, highlighting a glaring gap between spending and service delivery. Emergency rooms across the country are buckling under the pressure. In many provinces, the average wait time in an ER is now over 20 hours for non-urgent care, and it's about to get worse. An aging population is placing even more strain on an already fragile system. By 2030, 23% of Canadians will be over the age of 65, up from just 17% in 2021. Furthermore, Canada is no longer the safe haven it once promised to be. The rising crime rates in major cities have shattered the ideal many, especially immigrants, had of a peaceful, secure life. Over the past few years, homicides, assaults, drug-fueled violence, and gang activity in urban centers like Toronto, Vancouver, and Edmonton climbed by 5 to 7%, leaving communities on edge. These aren't just numbers, they reflect a deeper, more troubling shift. Immigrants who once viewed Canada as a refuge now find themselves grappling with the harsh realities of public safety. In fact, 35% of new immigrants cite safety concerns as a potential reason for leaving. As gun violence rose 9% in 2022 with over 1,362 incidents, illegal firearms, particularly handguns trafficked into Canada, have intensified gang wars, making previously lively neighborhoods unsafe after dark. The streets that used to hum with life have now become battlegrounds for survival. Surveys reveal that 1 in 4 Canadians feel less secure in their neighborhoods compared to 5 years ago, a stark contrast to the Canadian dream many envisioned. But the frustration isn't just with rising crime, it's with the systems in place, or lack thereof, to address the root causes. Poverty, addiction, and unaffordable housing have festered in the same neighborhoods where gang activity thrives, creating a cycle that policing cannot break. The decision to leave isn't exclusive to Native Canadians. Immigrants too are grappling with the same dilemma, whether to stay and hold on to their maple leaf ambition or move on. More and more, immigrants are making the difficult decision to leave. For some, it means returning to their home countries. For others, it means relocating to nations where their skills are more valued and living costs are more manageable, such as the United States, Germany, or Australia. Because despite the growing demand of the skilled labor force in Canada, skilled immigrants are finding it incredibly difficult to settle in. 35% of immigrants in Canada are underemployed, working jobs that are far below their education and skill levels. This underutilization of talent is costing not only the individuals themselves, but also the Canadian economy. One of the biggest barriers is the recognition of foreign credentials. A staggering 40% of immigrants report challenges in getting their qualifications and certifications recognized in Canada. Doctors, engineers, and other professionals from abroad often find themselves working in low-paying jobs while waiting for their credentials to be approved, a process that can take years. Even when immigrants do find work in their field, they often earn far less than their Canadian-born counterparts. In fact, recent immigrants earn, on average, 20% less than those born in Canada. This wage disparity is particularly evident in high-skill industries such as engineering, medicine, and technology, where immigrants with advanced degrees are systematically underpaid. Frustration is mounting. In 2023, several protests broke out in major cities like Toronto and Montreal, with immigrants calling for better support and fair treatment. In fact, 39% of immigrants are considering leaving Canada altogether, citing financial challenges, lack of career progression, and insufficient government support. Many feel that while Canada welcomes them with open arms, it fails to provide the necessary infrastructure to help them thrive. All these things are fading once glittering image of Canada as a land of opportunity and prosperity. The Maple Leaf dream no longer seems attainable. It's not just a matter of leaving for better opportunities, but a pressing issue of survival in a country that increasingly feels out of reach for its own citizens.